What is being questioned? The manner in which his name has been added suddenly and then the next day he's been arrested. You also say that this is nothing political, but you know, we've also seen none less than your ministers actually celebrating firecrackers being burst.
Is it now sinking in that you've achieved what was seemingly looking like impossible even on the night before the day of the summit?
I was working as really the chef of the Prime Minister. His personal credibility was very high and I could pull it off.
All the focus, of course, has been on the joint declaration, and 12 hours before the declaration was officially adopted, negotiators were still not sure whether they would arrive at it.
I don't know about 12 hours, I can tell you it was much closer than that. This is how big international events go, that it really goes down to the wire and you've got to hold your nerve, you've got to make that last push.
अगर आपको दिखता है कि कम हुआ है तब देख लीजिए आज जो ये हुआ है क्या ये दिखाता है कि आतंकवाद कम हुआ है इसको ये उल्लू बना रहा है ये क्या
अब कश्मीर की आवाज़ ये है कि भाई यहाँ कत्ल गारत जारी है मासूम लोग मारे जा रहे हैं तो प्रोपेगेंडा से नहीं होगा आप अमन की तरफ कदम बढ़ाइए यहाँ का वज़ीर आज़म कहना चाहिए हम पाकिस्तान के साथ अमन से रहना चाहते हैं और खून खराबा बंद होना चाहिए हिंदुस्तान की अजमत कम नहीं हो और इन मिलिटेंट्स के साथ भी बात होनी चाहिए आखिर तुम्हारे दिमाग में क्या इज़्तिराब है
ये कांग्रेस की सोच है सैफुद्दीन सोच आर्मी के चीफ को सड़क का गुंडा कहती है कांग्रेस और आतंकवादी के मन को पढ़ने के लिए प्रयास करना चाहिए इस बयान की हम निंदा करते हैं
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching Viewpoint. I'm Anusha Soni. The encounter operations in Jammu and Kashmir's Anantnag district, which began on Wednesday, are still underway. Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish, DSP Humayun Bhatt are among the 4 officials who have been martyred in these ongoing operations. Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish and DSP Humayun Bhatt are among the 4 officials who were martyred, who laid down their lives for the country. The mortal remains of these bravehearts, Manpreet Singh and Major Ashish Dhonchak, were brought to their respective residences. The last rites were conducted with full state honours. The terrorists who are hiding in the thick forest cover are believed to be from a Lashkar proxy. An image that will continue to sting our hearts is the 6-year-old son of Colonel Manpreet Singh giving a final salute to his slain father and his mortal remains. We'll talk about various aspects of this encounter operation and our brave hearts, including the politics around it. But let's begin this conversation with a very special guest who's joining us today evening. We have General VP Malik, who's the former Chief of the Army Staff from the Indian Army, joining us on the broadcast. General Malik, good evening, sir. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. We saw those live visuals on our television screens today. The kind of farewell that was given to to the bravehearts, especially Colonel Manpreet Singh, in the manner in which his family, his 6-year-old son, came forward and gave a final salute. You were present during those last rites. You were there with the family. What was really like it, sir? I mean, it's difficult to describe in words, at least for me.
Good evening, Anusha. We've gone through very sad days, last 2-3 days, ever since we learned this news about the encounter in which 3 bravehearts, Manpreet, Ashish and Deputy SP Humayun Bhatt, they got killed in the action. And one more casualty has now taken place. The person who was wounded, he is also, I believe, died.
Yeah.
So there have been sad days, and Manpreet belonged to a village which is close by. So we thought it was our duty, responsibility to go there and participate in the cremation that takes place. It's always a very sad thing for us, those in the army, and particularly when we have our regimental officers being killed like this. Both Manpreet and Ashish, they belong to my regiment, the 6th Light Infantry. And to some extent, I can say that yes, people like me, my juniors, have mentored them. There is a very strong bonding, although we feel sad for any soldier. But those who you have mentored yourself, you feel more close to them, and therefore the sadness. And as you mentioned, the young boy, 16, who was wearing army fatigue, having to light the fire, that brought tears to everybody's eyes.
Yeah.
And these are the very emotional thing. One feels very sad looking at the family, the young lady who has to now bring up the children, the parents who have lost their son. But then this is the duty, this is the responsibility that everyone has. Manpreet was commanding a battalion, he was commanding officer, and both of them were very brave officers, I must say.
Yeah.
Brave, having been awarded a gallantry award, both of them had earned Sena Medal gallantry. So to lose such bright, brave officers, you do feel sad. So it's been a sad moment for all of us.
And it's indeed a personal loss to you as you narrate how you had mentored them, and these were brave officers. Sir, we saw the family in tears, and one could only imagine what they must be going through. Though families of these bravehearts are made of sterner stuff, but it must be very difficult for the family. Could you tell us more about these officers who you had personally mentored? We know the kind of laurels they had actually achieved, the kind of medals that they had achieved because of the contribution they had made to the Indian Armed Forces. But any personal anecdote or anything personal that you remember of these officers since you had mentored them and framed them and guided them?
19 Rashtriya Rifle, they have most of the boys in that battalion. They are from my regiment, the 6th Light Infantry.
Yes.
And I feel sad. We lost one commanding officer when I was army chief at that time, or about to become army chief. That time, that incident took place in Kupwara. So while being in the army, being a senior officer, you do face these issues, these problems. You see the colleagues getting killed in these actions. But when you lose a commanding officer, a bright commanding officer, you feel worse. And that time we lost Colonel Sharawat, and today, day before yesterday, we lost Colonel Manpreet. Both very bright officers, And then you look back that how we have to look after their families. The children have to grow up. The mothers have a much greater responsibility. They have to be very strong. And I have seen many widows, having to look after them. But I think they are able to look after themselves better, and they become stronger. So I've seen all those changes taking place when such casualties occur. And as I said, being in the army with the kind of responsibility that we have, the kind of duty that we have to carry out our actions. We have to lead from the front, and in that process, when we do lose our colleagues, our people whom you have mentored, but then, as I said, you have to carry out your responsibilities. You have to carry on with the work, the responsibility that have been given. Fortunately, the army does have this ethos where you carry on and you look for retribution as soon as possible. And I'm sure now 19 RR would be looking forward to that retribution
Yeah.
against those people who have done it. But here I must tell you that while I keep seeing all these tactical actions for such a long time now, I have been seeing them. In fact, Pakistan has been carrying out these kind of activities for last 50 years now. Earlier in Punjab and subsequently J&K and then the whole of India, their policy hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And although we may have succeeded in reducing the number of casualties, but the fact is that their policy hasn't changed. And that is what I think we need to work on, how to make them change their policy. And that requires strategic thinking at the very senior level, at the policy making level.
So,
I hope that is being looked into.
Sir, I think you're making a point which is at the heart of these losses. I mean, once the glare is off, a lot of us will not remember in the same magnitude like the family would, the loss that has come on the family of, say, Colonel Manpreet Singh or Major Ashish. But the policy change that you're talking about, yes, the number of casualties or the kind of lives which are lost in security forces, the numbers have come down. But what kind of tactical or strategic shift in policy do we really need in your learned experience, sir?
Look, tactically, we keep on trying to improve our operational effectiveness, both in terms of experience that we gain every time we go out for these actions, also with the kind of developments that are taking place, the technology that is enabling us to carry out these operations more effectively. Things are much different today than they were in my time. And today we got drones, we got all kinds of radars, so technology is also enabling us to do better.
Yeah.
As far as the infiltration part is concerned, this cross-border infiltration,
Yes, sir.
that we may have checked to some extent, but we have not been able to eliminate, and I don't believe it will be possible for us to totally eliminate. What I am looking at is that all these improvements in our tactical operation, and even at the operational level, we may have been able to ensure that our casualties are reduced and we are able to kill more and more of these people who have intruded. Their number is going up indeed, but the policy from the other side has not changed.
Exactly.
So while we are looking into these and improving our operational effectiveness within Kashmir or along the LAC, we may have even done some operations across the LAC. We have also carried out the aerial action in their territory, going right up to after Pulwama. But it has not enabled us to make them change their policy. I think it's time now for us to see that this thing which has been going on, how do we make them change their policy? And that is what I feel that we need to have a look into again. We should relook at it, we should study it afresh, and we should work out some strategy which makes them disrupt whatever they have been doing. That is what I was talking.
So, my last question to you, my final question to you, the kind of contribution and your stature forbids me to make you a part of any kind of petty political discourse which is happening in the country. So, that's not the point that I'm going to refer to in the question that I'm about to ask you. But there have been many questions, not just recently, but I believe for decades, that can talks and terror go hand in hand? And you're talking about something similar, that when it comes to the attitude from across the border, that has not changed. India has taken a mix of both in terms of diplomatic efforts, plus ensuring that the security in the affected areas, in the geographical region of Jammu and Kashmir, and especially the affected district, is tightened. But what is that strategic change that India can make in order to eliminate it at some point in time? I'm not saying it's going to go away immediately, but is there a medium to long-term solution that we can look at?
Look, as far as the tactical operations are concerned, whatever we are doing, I think we'll carry on and we'll try and keep improving on that side. But as far as the strategic aspects are concerned, we have seen in the last 40, 50 years, whichever government has come, whichever prime minister has come, the fact is that they haven't changed their policy. So to keep on questioning each other makes no sense to me at all. So why should the political parties be only pointing fingers at each other and not looking at the experience that we have acquired over the last 40, 50 years? After all, we've had prime minister from different parties, we've had different governments all along. So it's high time that we saw that, look, the other side, the adversary, is just not changing its policy. So therefore, at strategic level, we have not been able to do what we wanted to do. The prime ministers have tried their peace talks. We have had all kinds of Aman ki Asha, and we've had, people are talking about cricket, banning cricket, banning cricket with Pakistan. These are not going to make them change their policy. So therefore, I think it's time that people got together and they realized that, look, instead of pointing fingers at each other, we work out on a policy at all levels. It should be an integrated policy which will involve politics, it will involve diplomacy, economy, and military, of course. And then work on that for some time and see if we can make them change their policy. So that is what I am looking at. As far as the operational side is concerned, tactics are concerned, you be rest assured that we will continue to improve, we will continue to do that. But that may reduce your casualties. It is not going to eliminate your altogether whatever is going on in J&K.
General Malik, I think you've made a huge argument today, and I believe a very valid one, that a lot of political players in this country need to hear that this bickering is not going to help. You need to have a long-term stable policy across political lines on different fronts, whether it's diplomacy, military, economy. It cannot be just about suspending cricket between the two nations. You're only belittling a very serious issue. I really appreciate your time, General VP Malik, for joining us on the broadcast, joining us on the show tonight and sparing your time. Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you, Anusha.
Thank you, sir. Well, as I said, even as the Kokarnag battle that continued to rage on, politics continues unabated over the encounter operation. You have the National Conference and the Congress leaders who have once again insisted that there should be talks with Pakistan and called it the only solution. BJP has condemned this, the Congress stance, and they've challenged it. They've said that these kind of views once again show that there are certain political parties which are sympathetic to the cause of Pakistan. That politics, despite the death of our bravehearts, continues in this country. Listen in to some key statements that have come so far.
लड़ाई से अमन नहीं आता है, बातचीत से अमन आता है। मुझसे बात नहीं करने से कोई फायदा नहीं है। बातचीत करनी दो मुल्कों की है जिनमें ये फसाद है।
मासूम लोग मारे जा रहे हैं, तो प्रोपेगेंडा से नहीं होगा। आप अमन की तरफ कदम बढ़ाइए। यहाँ का वजीर आजम कहना चाहिए हम पाकिस्तान के साथ अमन से रहना चाहते हैं और खून खराबा बंद होना चाहिए। हिंदुस्तान की अजमत कम नहीं होगी।
ये कांग्रेस की सोच है, सैफुद्दीन सोच। आर्मी के चीफ को सड़क का गुंडा कहती है कांग्रेस, और आतंकवादी के मन को पढ़ने के लिए प्रयास करना चाहिए, इस बयान की हम निंदा करते हैं।
मेजर आशीष की मां वो कह रही है कि उन्होंने तो बच्चा पाल पोस कर देश को सौंप दिया, उसने देश के लिए कुर्बानी दे दी, लेकिन अगर बुलेट प्रूफ जैकेट सरकार ने दिला दिए होते तो आज उनका बेटा और बाकी लोग जिंदा होते। इसको सुनने के बाद भारतीय जनता पार्टी या सरकार की कोई नैतिकता है इस पर बात भी करने की?
Well, joining us on the broadcast is Ashpreet Kadyal from the Congress Party. We also have Tara Kata, who's a distinguished fellow at the IPCS and a former director of the National Security Council Secretariat. Mr. Shashikant, who is the former DGP of Punjab, is also with us on the show. And Lalit Ambardar, who's a Kashmiri activist, is also joining us on the broadcast. Ashpreet, I want to come to you first. And, before we began that conversation, we had General Malik with us on the broadcast, the former army chief. And he said all this talk about from various political parties, and of course he didn't name anyone, I have to quote him correctly. He said there needs to be a broader consensus, political consensus in this country when it comes to the country of Pakistan. In the last 50 years, whichever government has come in, the other political party has targeted them. Once again, we are seeing the kind of politics, the political statements that have come out after the death of our bravehearts. But I believe the question is for all political parties, including the Congress, that have we really had a consistent policy when it comes to Pakistan? And is this really an occasion to take pot shots at each other?
Thank you, Anusha, for the question. Kindly allow me a minute and a half uninterrupted. First and foremost, it's very unfortunate that the Bharatiya Janata Party's government was busy, welcoming the Prime Minister, garlanding the Prime Minister, giving him a rousing welcome when our Jawans were fighting the terrorists, and when they were lying, in the line of duty, they were laying down their lives for us, for India. And the Bharatiya Janata Party's government, our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, could not suspend his schedule to take stock of the operation and to make sure that an action was ordered in it immediately. And this is not the first time, Anusha, this has happened. Back in the day in 2019, when Pulwama happened, you remember that the former governor of Jammu and Kashmir, Mr. Satyapal Malik, he made big revelations that he called Mr. Modi and he said that the 40 Jawans that have been martyred have died due to our mistake, and Mr. Modi told him to keep quiet, is what he said in very clear words, the former governor. Number two, I want to ask the Bharatiya Janata Party's government, if there is a spokesperson sitting from them, that what inquiry was ordered into it? Was an inquiry ordered? Was anyone made accountable? Because Mr. Satyapal Malik also added that no inquiry was ordered by the Bharatiya Janata Party's government. Had it been ordered, the Home Minister, then Home Minister,
I've given you 1.5 minutes uninterrupted, as you said. My question to you was not on Pulwama. My question to you was on something that has happened right now. You've made certain opening arguments, but I'm afraid they're not contextual and relevant to the debate we are having right now.
I'm sorry, Anusha, I do not have to seek permission before addressing some concerns of the nation, concerns of the army, concerns of Indians. If the Bharatiya Janata Party's government has to show apathy every time an incident happens, I'm sorry, we will question them. And every time they have shown apathy, they have shown ignorance, we will make them accountable for that. Because we happen to be living in this country, surviving, breathing, living because of our Jawans, because of our soldiers. And if there are people, mothers, parents coming in front of the soldiers and saying that if bulletproof jackets would have been there, many lives could have been saved, many Jawans could have been saved. I'm sorry. This government should feel ashamed for that.
All right.
And they should apologize.
Let me try and bring in Mr. Lalit Ambardar, who's an activist also into this discussion. Mr. Ambardar, do you find this criticism that has been leveled on the government valid? I mean, the fact of the matter is, and most of the army veterans, including the former army chief, have said that, look, the number of casualties in Jammu and Kashmir have come down significantly. But because the attitude of the neighbor across the border has not changed, we cannot completely eliminate it. What we require in this country is a mature political consensus and a consistent policy when we are dealing with Pakistan. It cannot be just each time a discussion about should we play cricket with them. That's not going to, let Pakistan change their stance or their policy towards India.
Anusha, I feel so sorry that you just now, General Malik, the veteran, he spoke his mind, and as a soldier, he gave his opinion. And it has not had any impact on the political opinion being expressed right here on your channel. Can you imagine how you are taking pot shots on the government? Narendra Modi is supposed to order life jackets, bulletproof jackets for the soldiers. Is Narendra Modi responsible for the standard procedure that has been implemented at site? Is he responsible for that? And let me tell you, if you have to take pot shots on Narendra Modi, if you have to, you hate him, that's your democratic right. But you are doing, in the meanwhile, in the process, you are hating India. You are letting down the nation. What has happened in Anantnag today is not a small skirmish. It's an act of war. You have 3 senior officers falling to the bullets of the jihadis right at the beginning of the operation. This should be a matter of concern. It's not Kargil, it's a mini Kargil happening right in the heart of the valley in Anantnag. So instead of coming together in support of the government, that you have an enemy which is an incorrigible enemy. Let me say it. The General Malik was referring to, let me say it openly. Successive government has bent down to see and seek French-will Pakistan. It's high time we realize seeking French-will Pakistan is like chasing mirage. Can you imagine why? Because they have tasted blood. Blood in 1947 came as a big achievement of Ghazwa Hind 1,000 years old war. They have achieved, they have tasted blood, and Kashmir Jihad is continuation of that, the 1,000 years of.
As far as the issue of policy, the medium to long-term policy issue is concerned, I believe Taraji has
a. Let me complete.
10 seconds to you, then I'll go to Tarakata. Please go.
Yeah. See, this government, any opposition party, let me say, even concluding this government, is yet to acknowledge formally what Kashmiri Hindus suffered, who were the first victims of Kashmir Jihad. Kashmir Jihad, Kashmiri Hindu genocide still goes unacknowledged.
I take that point.
Instead of giving a constructive suggestion to the government, you're only trying to, and what you're doing, what you're doing.
Is divisive politics really the way when it comes to national security issues? I think that's the broader issue that we continue to talk about. Taraji, I'm coming back to you, and I want to hinge the debate today on what General Malik had really said. And General Malik argued that diplomacy, military, economy, on different fronts, there needs to be a consistent policy in this country, a consistent stance in this country, and all political parties need to be on the same table. I mean, I did sense that it was belittling in many ways when we talk about should we play cricket with Pakistan each time we suffer loss of this nature. It has to be about a political consensus. It has to be about a strategic long-term policy that India adopts irrespective of political party, whichever is administering the country or ruling the country at the central level. Taraji.
See, I have served with 5 governments. I've seen policy with all of them. It's been in the past pretty inconsistent. So I'll just leave it at that. It's the right of political opposition to criticize as long as they don't question the army's operational integrity. I'm okay with the opposition doing whatever it does. That's fine. But like you said, I would wish that they could stand together and, demand of the international community that look at this country which gets away with all this. I just listened to, I won't name who, a certain US official who was talking about counterterrorism operations and saying that we still work with Pakistan. What kind of, policy is this where a country does all this and gets away with it? I'd like to, when this government, which I'm happy to see, has adopted a consistent policy. I'm not supporting politically anybody, but it has been consistent.
But Taraji, allow me interjection, and I'm doing this for the purpose of the debate to substantiate it more. You worked with about 5 governments, as you argued, and you said that on the policy front, a lot of governments have not been consistent, and you do sense a certain amount of stability and consistency when it comes to this government. What is the consistency that we are talking about? Could you substantiate it? Could we go a layer deeper?
You've taken separatism off the table. Yep. You're done. That is the biggest policy change that you've done. Nobody, and you see how Kashmir is appreciated, how it is stabilized. That is the point. It is no longer anything that is not on the table anymore. We are done. That's what Pakistan, that's the message which has gone to Pakistan, and I've seen the effect of that message. Then I'd like to bring you, however, one more issue. See, in the last July, August, September, March onwards, every month, there has been a Pakistani arrested outside the country. One was in The Hague, one was in Washington, one was in UK. They're all over the place. So the Pakistani, what shall I say? I don't want to say the people. I mean, the people are a different entity, but this whole terrorism in Pakistan has gone out of control.
Yeah.
If it's not blasphemy, if it's not attacks against Christians, the latest one, the one which was a court order by the Dutch government against this Pakistani cricketer who issued a death threat against an MP. I mean, on a blasphemy issue. So this is the mentality you're dealing with, and it's very dangerous.
But ma'am, I believe one moot point that you've made, and as I move in the line of arguments, the moot point was there has to be a stable political consensus, and you argue that one thing that this government presently has been consistent about in these 2 terms is to take separatism off the table. They have not created any nuance there, any degree of second guessing there. The separatism, that discourse is off the table, and that's a clear position that this government has taken. Mr. Shashikant, has that position by the government to take separatism, that narrative off the table, help the cause of peace and stability in Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, let me make it very clear. We have been talking about consistencies and inconsistencies. One thing is clear, we all, irrespective of our political affiliations, have to realize that it is not insurgency, it is not, religious thing, it is Pakistani-sponsored low-intensity warfare. And that is the definition which all the persons who talk about strategy, they recognize. I fail to understand why we as a nation refuse to accept it, that yes, Pakistan is continuously indulging in a proxy war, is low-intensity warfare, and they have to be dealt with accordingly. And I think one more thing, I heard that somebody was saying, I think the ma'am was saying, probably rightly so, because she must be knowing more than I am, I have been in all sorts of intelligence agencies. And I know these terrorists sitting in Pakistan have not gone berserk as such. They are being closely guided by the ISI. They are trained, they are indoctrinated, all guidance, all money, arms, everything has to go. My only one point that I'll make it, the entire nation, political parties included, have to realize that it is a war, low-intensity war, a proxy war, and it has to be dealt with as such. If we talk of terrorism, terrorism is never homegrown. This is something which is being imposed upon our country, by Pakistan. Realize it and come together. Till such time there is no consensus, we keep on fighting like we fight within a family. Tera, mera, that kind of thing, that doesn't work. There has to be realization, a proper strategy, and then we should act as far as Pakistan is concerned. Thank you.
Okay. Arshpreet Kadyal, taking that point forward, separatism off the table, and that's a consistent position that this government has had. In fact, I must raise it to you because these are points that were raised by certain BJP spokespersons as well earlier in the day as we were covering the story. There was a press conference by the BJP in which it was argued that various Congress leaders, including Rahul Gandhi, have a history of making statements which tantamount to quote-unquote mocking the Indian Army and the Indian Armed Forces. So the Congress party has no moral authority to tell BJP anything.
If anyone is mocking our army, our Jawans' sacrifice, it is in clear words the Bharatiya Janata Party. Here our Jawans have made a supreme sacrifice, laid down their lives for the country, and on the other hand, the Bharatiya Janata Party at its national headquarters is having celebrations. So let's have that very clear that the Bharatiya Janata Party should apologize for doing this, unjustifiable act. And number two, the gentleman who's the Kashmiri activist, he said that this is not a small skirmish, it's an act of war. Definitely. And if it is an act of war, shouldn't the government have acted accordingly and not have had celebrations? Instead, number two, could the government not suspend its schedule and make sure they took stock of the operation? And he said, it's not the government's job. This is not the government's job to intervene. If it is not, please question the government. Why do they have Agniveer program then? Why has the government intervened there? Did you ever question the Bharatiya Janata Party government over that? No.
I will take the objection that you've raised, Arshpreet, about the optics of how it really looked like. And was that really the proportionate response to the experts on the panel? But there's another point to which I want you to respond. That is it merely about the optics of it, or should we also talk about the substance of it in terms of the manner in which the government has taken its position when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir, whether it's the abrogation of the special status, or is it about bringing down the instances of violence that we have seen, or the number of stone pelting instances? The overall situation in the valley has become better by sheer numbers if you look at them. Arshpreet.
Let's talk of the substance. And I'll mince no words. Anusha, you remember when this government were to operationalize Article 370, many of their senior leaders said in clear words that there would be no militancy. There would be no terrorist attacks. No means nothing at all. And after that, we have seen how many Jawans, how many army officers, how many police officers have had to lay down their lives for the country. Now, should the Bharatiya Janata Party's government not condemn themselves for this? Out of a little bit of respect for our Jawans, that they said something, but they could not deliver upon that. And number two, one thing for sure, if Pakistan is leaving no stone unturned to attack our country, to attack our Jawans, should the Prime Minister have visited Pakistan to wish Mr. Nawaz Sharif, the former Prime Minister, birthday? Should he have had Kashmiri chai with him? Should he have
Ashpreet,
had biryani with him?
let's be
Should
fair
the government
here.
not? Should the government not
Let's be
question
fair
itself
here
for that?
and call what it is. I mean, you've made certain valid arguments and that I've taken to the panel as well. But in fact, we have Taraji on the broadcast. She doesn't have any political affiliations. She argued that when it comes to policy vis-a-vis Pakistan, various governments have been inconsistent. Yes, she's not named the Congress party, but yes, it's the view of various strategic experts that our policy vis-a-vis Pakistan has not been consistent, and this is under the Congress regime. Let's come to the second point, which is a rather more substantial argument. The manner in which the discourse around separatism has been taken off the table. It's a very clear political position that the government of India has taken. This is not a position that the Congress party was able to take at any point in independent India's history. Isn't that factual?
Now I'll tell you what the government has done. When in 2019 Pulwama happened, 40 Jawans were martyred, Mr. Modi's documentary did not stop. Did not stop the documentary shooting. And I think we should call a spade a spade. If the government is doing wrong, if the government isn't doing its duty, they should be condemned for that. And here, it's not about politics. It's about your priorities. Are our Jawans not your priority at all whatsoever, that you could not stop your documentary and take stock of the operation?
No,
there also this happened.
You know, had a documentary, had a political function being called off, I mean, it would have been more somber, it would be more gracious, but that doesn't substantially... No, one second. But Ashpreet, that doesn't answer substantially. Has the government done better on the strategic front or in terms of enhancing our operational capabilities when it comes to fighting the terrorists? I have to bring another guest as well.
Busy shooting a documentary.
I have to bring another guest as well. Taraji, do you buy that criticism? There's a lot of optics here. It's a politically charged attack which is coming in against the government, and I believe opposition has all the right to question that. But their questions are more about political optics, or do you sense that there is a larger substance to it? Taraji.
I think, it is, to be absolutely fair, a certain degree of political, thing is, I get that, right? I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I also have to say that this is a government which took the fight into Pakistan. We've never done that. That is drawing a red line, saying this is as far as we're going, no more. Will terrorism suddenly be switched off like a tap? As an operational person, I can tell you, it can't. And it won't. Even in the months ahead, you will see more terror attacks. It is not going to go away so easily. So once you dismantle that whole terror network, it went down hugely. Now, in this attack, what you're saying is these people hidden in caves, they slowly they'll try and get another kind of a network. I mean, the IGP can tell you that they will try to get another network going. This will continue regardless of Article 370. Because that's why I refer to Pakistan. That is Pakistan's nature. It was not going to change. The weaker it is, the more it will attack you.
Yeah.
So you talk to them, let them first shut down 20, 30 terrorist camps, then we'll talk to them. Give me a signal that you're willing to do something about this, not just talk about what.
Mr. Shashikant, when it comes to the modus operandi which has been used by these terrorists there, and that gunfight or that encounter operation still continues to go on, they continue to use the safe spots in a dense forest area. And that makes it all the more very difficult for security forces to nab these terrorists. And this kind of method has been seen in the last couple of encounter operations which have been done, especially in the Anantnag district. Is this something new that we are witnessing?
No, it ain't new. It has happened all over the world, because these guys who are indulging in this kind of activities, they think that they want to save themselves first. And here I'll agree with the ma'am she just talked about. Of course, since Pakistan is getting weaker it gets, it will become more and more hostile. And my question is, talking of consistencies, inconsistencies, optics, whatever it is, I fail to understand, maybe you can call me a hawk, why we have not till now raised the issue of Pakistan occupied Kashmir. If they keep on doing all these things as far as our country is concerned, our entire Kashmir is concerned. This is about the time when all the political parties, irrespective of their differences or whatever, why can't in one voice we start talking about Pakistan occupied Kashmir and tell it to the entire world that is our Kashmir and we want it back. That, I think, will be an appropriate answer, because if we don't raise it, Pakistan might be thinking that we are sort of getting weak, that maybe we are compromised. No, there's no compromise. As a hawk, I'll say yes, Pakistan and entire world has to say that we want our entire Kashmir, which is under Pakistan occupation. Thank you.
Mr. Lalit Ambardar, have the political differences back home here in India, or the political schisms, made it difficult for India to have a strong position against Pakistan, and the change of successive parties at the union level, at the central level, has meant that there has been inconsistency in the method and manner we have dealt with Pakistan? It is trivializing an issue when you compare what Pakistan has been doing in Kashmir, fostering terror, and in fact across the world, and you talk about whether we should play cricket with them. And we need to have better solutions. We need to have a medium to long-term policy when we are dealing with a hostile neighbor like Pakistan.
See, we need to understand, right from the day Pakistan was created, Pakistan was born, we have been mollycoddling Pakistan. And you know, the day Pakistan, 14th of August 1947, why Pakistanis did not fall from heaven. They were Indian-born Indians who betrayed their motherland on 14th of August 1947 in the name of Jinnah Sunnishan theory, in the name of Islam, and created Pakistan. You know what was their parting slogan? Ladke liya hai Pakistan, haske leke Hindustan. In spite of this, can you imagine, in the military history, ever a winning army was asked to stop by the then government of India? We could have liberated whole of occupied Jammu and Kashmir at that time, and this problem would have ceased even then. Then we went to UNO. Then third time, I tell you after 2611 in Mumbai, what happened? After 3 months, only after 3 months, the then Prime Minister chose to call Pakistanis men of peace, and we watched the cricket match together in Chandigarh. This has been the policy. Even Narendra Modi did the same thing. First thing he wanted uninvited, he wanted to go to Pakistan. Everybody has tried to do it, but from 5th of August 2019, I say it with confidence, like it has changed the whole narrative. And what happened on 5th August 2019, it was historical. And I tell you, everybody claims that after Article 370 is gone, then everything will come everything hunky-dory. No, not at all. On 5th of August 2019 began the process of dismantling that Islamo-fascistic ecosystem that was flourishing in Pakistan. Mini Pakistan was flourishing in Pakistan. That process of dismantling of that has begun. It will take time. But as far as Kashmir jihad is concerned, it's a hybrid war as on today. And everywhere in the world, jihad conflicts are reversed only or fought only through war. And let me tell you, sir, and ma'am was also saying about it, listen, you cannot, there's no jihad war has been won till now in the modern history. I follow jihad conflict around the world. You can only contain it till there are reforms within Islam within. And I see a whole ray of hope in Prince Salman of Saudi Arabia. Till that happens, we have to live with it. And as sir was referring to, we have to shift the war theater.
I have to close the debate. I have to close this discussion in the next few minutes. I want to take one final comment from all our guests as far as political consensus is concerned. And we have Arshpreet also with us on the broadcast, who's from the Congress party. But Arshpreet, just keeping the politics aside for a moment and talking about the sacrifices of Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish and DSP Humayun Bhatt and various other soldiers who have laid down their lives fighting for this country, is it time to keep the political differences, domestic political differences aside, and perhaps a consensus politically as to how to deal with Pakistan? Is it possible that each time a terror attack happens, BJP and Congress are not fighting and we are talking about how to deal with Pakistan?
Exactly. The Bharatiya Janata Party, I hope some of their leaders, especially in the government, are listening to you and would make sure that they do not just listen but also implement it when it comes to their actions and it comes to their words. Because you see, the family was mourning the death of these bravehearts. And on the same, at the same time, the Bharatiya Janata Party was celebrating. So they should be a little more sensitive. And number two, you know, when we talk of the substance, anyone here on the panel, if could tell me, was the government right when they allowed ISI into the Pathankot airbase? Was it right for them to do it? And the repercussions.
Listen, let me answer.
I'll come to you. Lalitji, I'll come to you.
ISI was allowed into our Pathankot airbase. Nobody can justify that. It was one of the biggest blunders committed ever on Indian soil. And
All right.
number two, all right.
All right, Lalit Ambadar, a quick comment from you. Yes, please go
Just listen. I said stop this bickering. What you did, I did. I can name under one thing. What did we do in Sharm el Sheikh? What did we do in Sharm el Sheikh?
I think you should question
do you
the
remember
government.
That? Number one,
they should stop the celebrations when this is happening.
Instead of
your government was,
BJP,
the government was
constructive
one at a
advice
time.
to the government.
Arshpreet, let him
What
speak.
should they
Arshpreet,
should
let
do?
him speak. Yeah.
What I tell you one thing. Instead of taking pot shot on BJP and
it's not for pot shots. The
this is
BJP
Kashmir.
celebrated.
Kashmir belongs to
The
you
BJP
as
was
well as to me.
celebrating when the family was mourning.
Forget about that. I'm telling you, what did you do in Sharm el Sheikh?
Did you condemn the government for that? Did you condemn the government for that?
I have done it 101 times.
I think both Arshpreet and Lalit Ambadar have answered the question that I asked, that is it possible to have some kind of consensus? I believe not. I believe the political atmosphere in this country has not really changed. I want to have closing comments from Taraji as well. She's with us on the broadcast. Taraji, give us a policy perspective. Is it possible? Are the inconsistencies between political parties and the approach that they take at a security level, at the policy level, so stark that there could be no consensus? Or is it merely the electoral political differences which are dominating how political parties approach this issue? Taraji.
I think that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, I think you're right. There can be no consensus on this. Rather than a blame game, I would like them all to come together and stand behind our Jawans. Say, listen, we are with you. No matter what happens, Congress, BJP, XYZ, whoever it is, we stand with our army. Can they do that? I would love to see that. That's it. You blame rest of it later.
I think that would also...
And the BJP should call an all-party meet. Anusha, just one thing. The Bharatiya Janata Party should call an all-party meet so that this is not just words, but it's translated into action also. And all of us.
I mean, yes, BJP is in power today and they are the party responsible that should have a political consensus on the table. But as the policy experts said, that we should always have had a policy, position when it comes to the issue. I believe that's all the time that we have. Thank you, gentlemen. Tara Karta, Lalit Ambadar, Shashikant and Arshpreet Kardial for joining us on the broadcast. We'll continue to get you the ground reports and what exactly is happening as that intense encounter operation is still underway. Slipping into a very short break here on Viewpoint. Welcome back. You're watching Viewpoint. We continue to keep our focus on the encounter operation which is underway for the last 48 hours. Gunfire and explosion echoed through the forest in Kokarnag, located in South Kashmir's Anantnag district. Anti-terror operations entered its third day today. Since morning of Friday, military and police units have been engaged in firing in the direction they suspect 2 to 3 terrorists could be holed up. Locals have confirmed hearing blasts in the morning near the encounter spot. Reports also emerge that one Jawan is injured and is missing right now. Confirmation is still awaited from the Indian Army. Let me try and cut across to my colleague Ishan, who's been tracking this story from the ground. He's joining us from the encounter side. Ishan, we have heard various security experts talking about what is happening in Kashmir right now, what is happening in Anantnag right now. What is the situation on the ground? What are the locals telling you?
Well, yes, there was again a lot of firing which took place and grenade hurling as well. It seems like that forces are trying to corner them, and forces believe that they are still in this area, and that's why a large explosions are being heard in this vicinity. There's a mountain behind me because it's dark now, so the operations would not be as intense as it were during the daytime because of the risk of getting into a trap or risk of having casualties. But I'm not sure whether my VJ will be able to show you these mountains or whether there is a possibility of showing them. But these are the mountains which are behind me where the operations are taking place, and this is where all the action happened throughout the day. Since yesterday we have seen a massive assault has been launched by the security forces to clear this area. One, they believe that there's a hideout high up between a V-shaped cave, V-shaped area where this natural cave is possibly, or a big stone is where they're hiding, and which is providing them a protection. And that is why so many UVGLs, use of drones and multiple resources is there, and they are trying to make sure that they're able to target that particular area where they could be hiding. Now the forces on the ground are also mobilized because one, there's a need for multiple teams. It has been now 3 days, forces would be exhausted, so there will be a need for more troops to be brought in. That is happening, but yes, forces are not leaving the ground. One, those security forces personnel are on the ground and holding their ground because they have trekked for several hours through this mountainous terrain, and this is not an easy task to climb up there. There could be slips, there could be stone which can just come out, and then you can fall down, and there are the multiple possibilities of nature being your enemy. But at the same time, forces are having a high morale. And who's there GOC of the Kashmir Valley came here. He met the Jawans and got a first-hand account of how the situation is. At the same time, DGP of J&K Police and ADG Kashmir Range also were present on the ground. This is being done generally to boost the morale and the operational preparedness, and see that what the forces are up to on the ground, and get a first-hand assessment of how the situation looks like. Multiple teams of forces have been engaged, and yes, one has to see that for how long does this encounter last, because it is now the day 3. It is possible that an encounter may drag for tomorrow as well.
It may drag on to tomorrow as well. Ishan, this is not the first time that the terrorists have used this method of using the thick, dense forest or the mountainous region as a cover for their terror activities. There are various intelligence inputs, in fact, some exclusive details that we were running here on CNN News 18, that there is a certain degree of local support that these terrorists get, and that is why they're able to survive in this difficult terrain or in this difficult geographical territory.
Well, absolutely right. There is support, no doubt about that, and that's why we are seeing the NIA, SI and other investigative agencies are trying to crack down on these elements wherever they find a loophole or a plug where there is a possibility of nabbing the person or raiding him and checking his digital device about the transactions that may be done, because money and the supplies which come to them is something which they want to choke, and to choke that, it is important to identify those areas where which are needed to be hammered, and that is why we're seeing a multi-agency approach. While the forces are engaged in encounters and trying to deal with the situation, at the same time investigation agencies are focusing on those elements who are funneling, giving money, and also providing logistical support, transporting them, and without that it cannot happen.
Right.
So yes, that is where the focus is. It might take some time for the forces to just get a hold of the entire situation, but yes, this has thrown a new challenge. Mountain is something where forces will now focus on and see how things go.
My last question to you, Ishan, one Jawan is missing. That is what was reported earlier. Any confirmation, any updates on that?
Well, yes, that's an injured Jawan. We have been told by our colleague Akash, he has been reporting from Delhi as well, getting details about this particular operation, that one of them was injured, he's injured, and yesterday also PRO in a statement of defense mentioned that there are 2 Jawans who are injured apart from the 3 officers that were those who were killed in action. But yes, there is a massive surge going on. The forces are trying to ensure that the casualties do not take place. One, because already massive casualties have happened in the shape of 2 senior officers of the army, and then you have the police's deputy SP. So decorated officers taking a hit is something which the army would not have wanted. They wanted to give a surprise element, but in return militants opened fire at them, and that is what caused the injuries, casualties, and then there was chaos for a while, and after that reinforcements were sent, and now you're seeing the encounter is going on.
Ishanwani, my colleague, getting us a report from the ground from the encounter site. He's been reporting from there non-stop. Thank you, Ishan, for getting us all those details. And as he said, the encounter operation might spill over to tomorrow as well. But remembering the sacrifice of our brave hearts and also keeping a close eye on that crucial security operations which are underway in Anantnag. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Viewpoint. Thank you so much for watching.
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. An encounter has been underway in Jammu and Kashmir's Anantnag for over 50 hours now, with Army launching a joint operation with Jammu and Kashmir police to hunt down terrorists in the dense forests of Kokarnag. The security forces are using new generation weapons and devices now, including strike-capable Heron drones in their intensified anti-terror operations. India has been paying a very teary goodbye to three of our brave hearts, Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish Dhonchak, and also Jammu and Kashmir Cop Humayun Bhatt, who made the supreme sacrifice while defending the country in Anantnag. Thousands queued up to pay their tributes to our heroes. Pakistan's continued support to these terror groups has remained a persistent challenge for regional stability. Despite centre's efforts to curb terrorism, Pakistan's involvement in aiding and abetting these groups continues to pose a threat for the peace in the region. Terrorist attacks in Jammu and Kashmir, many of which have been traced back to Pakistan-based groups, have not only claimed innocent lives, but they have managed to cause damage to our forces as well. There is no denying that terrorism has been pushed to the margins, and thus the final hour will be possibly darkest, as they say. But given that we have suffered huge losses as far as this encounter is concerned, and this is the third of several such encounters that have had to take place in Jammu and Kashmir recently, is it not time to go all out and draw a line once and for all as far as Pakistan is concerned? We'll take that question to our experts joining us in just a bit. First, let's also break down what's happened in Jammu and Kashmir today. Remember, there are two separate encounters and operations that are going on, but let me first tell you a little bit about what transpired as far as Anantnag is concerned. So this anti-terror operation is continuing for a third day, and it looks like it will spill into a fourth day too. Remember, two terrorists are believed to be holed up as far as this encounter is concerned. Now the latest that we're learning is that after the martyrdom of 3 soldiers, 1 soldier has also been declared missing, and while another has been declared injured, but his condition is said to be stable. Drones and quadcopters, as I mentioned, new age devices have now been deployed and pressed into this operation to flush out the terrorists. Rocket launchers have been brought into action as well, and we are hoping, of course, that we will hear good news soon. Meanwhile, there is another operation that was on in Baramulla. 2 suspected individuals have been apprehended as far as that operation is concerned, and 5 hand grenades and warlike stores have also been recovered. Remember, earlier there had been an attack in Rajouri too, where we suffered casualty. Now, News18 is also learning more of why these attacks are taking place in the locations that they are coming to light from, and how terror groups have changed their tactics over the last year or so. And how is that manifesting? Let me just break that down for you. So first of all, there is a pattern of emerging now of terror attacks, and all of them have been concentrated on both sides of the Pir Panjal mountain range. Earlier, these infiltrators used to hide with locals. Now they are just taking cover as far as these natural hideouts like the caves are concerned. Hence, information is hard to come by because there is less contact with locals. A local contact is also used to supply some daily provisions. And these contacts are paid good money now, not being threatened at gunpoint like they were earlier. Again, this is leading to less information coming in. Police suspects this is the drug money that is being used to pay for this, drugs that are routinely smuggled or dropped into India, often using drones as well. And their tactic, the terror group's tactics now have shifted more to a guerrilla warfare, which of course is less intensive but takes a little bit longer, and possibly that is what is playing out as well. Let me also tell you why Pir Panjal is emerging as that mountain range or that area where a lot of these terrorists are hiding themselves in, they're holding themselves there, and then they are mounting these attacks from that area. Why is it so? Number one is the reason that these are, dense jungles. Also, they are interconnected jungles, so they allow for escape, and the terrain is extremely difficult for the security forces. Also, creating any kind of blockade, as I mentioned, becomes harder because the terrain is very, very challenging. And connected reason is also the third reason. Now terrorists are choosing these natural hideouts, which is making it tougher, of course, to nab them as quickly as it would be in any other terrain or region. With that, the big question we asked though today, as this terror bleeds India, is it not time for India to draw the line? And everything is going for India. Of course, not much is going for Pakistan. We have the upper hand. Should we use that upper hand? Is the time right? I'll take that question to many of our experts joining us in just a bit.
Yeah, I'm also feeling sad being from the same family. And we hope that people who have carried out these things, they will be sorted out soon.
जब तक कोई रास्ता न ढूंढा जाए जिससे अमन आ सके, लड़ाई से अमन नहीं आता है।
आर्मी के चीफ को सड़क का गुंडा कहती है कांग्रेस और आतंकवादी के मन को पढ़ने के लिए प्रयास करना चाहिए, इस बयान की हम निंदा करते हैं।
First up, I want to go across to Lieutenant General KGS Dhillon, who's joining us. Former commander of the 15 Corps, has served extensively in Jammu and Kashmir. Sir, I'll begin by thanking you for your time. We are, of course, speaking at a time which is terrible for the country. We've seen the martyrdom of 3 of our soldiers and Jawans. And you participated in the last rite ceremony of Colonel Manpreet. This has been a heavy day for all of us, not just the family, but for the entire country.
Good evening, Shwani, and good evening to all your viewers. First of all, I must pay my condolences once again to all the families of the bravehearts who lost their life fighting terrorism in Kashmir. And also, I must say with great pride in my heart, they did it for the nation, and if required, every Indian will do it every time all over again. Now, coming to your question proper, yes, I attended the last rites of the funeral of Colonel Manpreet Singh Sena Medal today in Chandigarh. And in addition to the serving officers, General Malik was there, the General Bickering was there, retired chief, former chiefs, and a lot of public, lot of civilians.
Yes.
The whole of the environment was of course it was a very sober occasion, but then everyone was very proud of the way they laid down their lives for the nation and where they fought it out with the terrorists.
You want to share any words before I ask you some questions about the situation? You want to share any words about Colonel Manpreet? Did you know him well or at all? And anything you want to share about him in, with your interaction with the other officers today?
Colonel Manpreet, I had not known him personally, or he had never served with me personally, but what I heard about him and what I had known otherwise of his Unit 12 Sikhlai, Great Paltan and 19 RR, which he was commanding. I had visited that unit a number of times when I was the corps commander, and Colonel Manpreet just joined after that, and he was like a tiger in the prowl. He had earned a Sena Medal gallantry while commanding this unit, leading operations from the front as a commanding officer himself just about 2 years ago, and he was a very, you can say, very forceful commander who always led the operations from the front. He was a great sportsman in the academy and even in his youngster days. A very fine officer, a very loved officer by his troops. And I spoke to a lot of veterans today. I spoke to a lot of serving officers today from his unit. There is a lady in the unit who was my unit girl, and spoke to them. He is a very, very fine man. Spoke to the family today, and I think we are proud of his sacrifice. We are proud the way He commanded the unit like a tiger, a real tiger, leading from the front.
Sir, speaking of the casualties that we have suffered, we've lost a colonel, a major, also a deputy superintendent of police. These are not the kind of casualties we suffer often. Why do you think the casualties have been of this kind? Because what we hear is that there are only 2 terrorists holed up in this encounter. So what do you make of the casualties we have suffered?
For the benefit of your viewers, I must tell you this area of Kokarnag and the jungles of Pir Panjal where this encounter took place, these are such thick foliage or such thick forest. They are primary forests, they are secondary forests and they are tertiary forests. They are patches of land which have not seen sunlight ever since the existence. Sun has never been able to reach those patches ever. The foliage is so thick, the forest cover is so thick, visibility at places is down to even 1 meter.
Okay.
If you're a person walking in front, you miss him, you may not be able to see him again for next, unless you shout for him. That is the type of terrain we are talking about. And since Indian Army had pushed the terrorists to the wall, they had broken the back of Pakistani sponsored terrorism, they were now in a hiding. They were running away from the security forces. They had gone into the jungles, the higher reaches. They are not coming to the populated areas or civilian areas because the type of prosperity which Kashmir is seeing, even the civilians are not welcoming them. So that is where now army columns, the police columns, they go something called seek and destroy. They walk into the jungles, they venture into the higher mountains, they seek the terrorist hideouts, they search for them and they destroy them. And this, as per my information, was an intelligence-based operation, where an intelligence of a particular hideout was available, and once it's an int-based operation or intel-based operation, that is how the commanding officer himself was leading this operation.
Okay.
And all operations are joint operations. The Deputy Superintendent of Police, Muzammil Bhatt, was there, and of course the company commander of that area was there. Since it was an intelligence-based operation and the contact did happen, that only proves the point which I am making, the commanding officer leading an int-based operation. It is just an unfortunate day. It was probably not our day that day.
Okay.
Otherwise, everything in this operation was as per the standing operating procedures.
Okay.
It is just that when the contact happened, the first burst is always the most dangerous. Because when you are moving, the terrorist is hiding, he is watching you, he has the initiative of the first burst. After that, he has to die. There is not two ways about it. So these casualties probably happened in the first volley of fire, which came from the terrorist side, who were hiding and who could see them coming. So it is just one of those things that day was not our day.
But you know, speaking about the Pir Panjal range that you're talking about, as I mentioned, we are also receiving inputs via agencies that, you know, these terrorists are not just hiding in the mountain range, they're also cutting down their interaction with locals. They're using drug money, for example, to pay off locals in their daily supplies while they hide in these caves and natural hideouts. How do you see this new challenge? As far as the Indian Army is concerned, do you think we also need to do something different to tackle this new tactic?
See, exactly the point I made in the answer to the last question. It is not a tactics they are adopting.
Okay.
It is how the security forces and the local awam have pushed them out of the populated areas. Their existence in the populated area or close to the villages has become untenable. The public, the civilians are not wanting them to come into their villages because they want prosperity, they want peace. So it is out of compulsion that they have moved out of civilian areas or the populated areas, because now civilians are cooperating with the security forces. The intel of the terrorists moving in the populated area is coming very easily. So it is out of compulsion they have to push back themselves and stay away from the populated area so that their information is not leaked out. Now coming to the drug money which you are talking about. Narco-terrorism is the basic tactics of funding the terrorism in Kashmir and other places used by Pakistan over the decades. Pakistan has used that drug money which was coming from Afghanistan and has supported and funded the terrorism
Mhm.
in Kashmir and other places. So it's not a new thing. It's a thing which Pakistan has been doing in the past. There have been enough curbs which have been put on the terror funding
Okay.
by the authorities, by the government. However, that still continues. The work in progress, I always say, we are in the consolidation phase of counter-terrorism.
Mhm.
Consolidation phase is the most difficult phase. Because when there are 3,000 terrorists, it's easy to kill those terrorists.
Mhm.
When there are only few numbers left, then the consolidation, the number of terrorists are very limited. It takes time to get the intelligence. It takes time to eliminate them.
Mhm.
So we are in the consolidation phase, and the best part is, Awam of Kashmir is with the security forces.
Mhm.
They want prosperity.
So, just my final question. You don't think that there is any need to change the way in the manner in which we've been leading our operations or in the manner in which we are strategizing these operations? You feel that that is fine, it's just a matter of time before we are able to flush out the last few terrorists as well?
Indian Army has always been using these tactics of seek and destroy, search and destroy.
Mhm.
In my young days as a captain, as a major, as a CO, even as a brigade commander, or a sector commander in the forest of Rajwad and Fruda, or in the forest of Lalab, we have been staying in jungles for 30 to 50 days altogether at a stretch and seeking the terrorists and destroying them in the jungles. So this tactics, what the operation which just happened, is nothing new.
Okay.
Indian Army is very good at carrying out operations in thick jungles of search and destroy missions, seek and destroy missions. So it's an all tactics, notwithstanding, with every time that terrorists evolve a new tactics or technique, it's an evolving process, it's a dynamic process. Indian Army also changes its tactics, changes its modus operandi, so that we stay one step ahead of the terrorist. So carrying out operation in jungles, seeking and searching terrorists in jungles and destroying them in the jungle itself is an all tactics of Indian Army, and we are very good at it.
Okay, fair enough. I do leave it at that. Lieutenant General Dillon, thanks a lot for making time and of course taking that question as to why we've suffered these casualties. As he said, and he's of course extremely experienced in those counter-terrorism operations, he's saying everything is right, the tactics, the way and the operations, it's just that it was not our day on that day. Let's also now open this up to our guests joining us. I'm joined by Tuhin Sinha, National Spokesperson of the BJP. Lieutenant General KJ Singh, former GOC-in-Chief Western Command, is also with us. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow ORF, also with us. Lieutenant General, why don't I begin with you? You know, it does pain every Indian's heart when you see casualties of this kind and the casualties of the ranks that you're seeing, you know, losing a colonel and a major. It is truly heartbreaking that something like this has transpired. Not taking away from the bravery of the Indian Army, but do you see that the last few encounters that have broken out, especially as we've been talking about in the Pir Panjal range or both sides of the Pir Panjal range, are indeed a matter of concern for India?
Shivani, Jai Hind. I join you all in saluting our bravehearts, Colonel Manpreet, Major Ashish, Deputy SP Humayun Bhatt, and I am hopeful that missing soldier would be located, injured one will get all right, and also 19 Rashtriya Rifles will achieve its objective. I am very hopeful of that. Now, there is a transition which is taking place in the way terrorists are carrying out these operations. There are changes. There is choice of areas has changed. We saw in certain encounters near Rajouri areas which had not been utilized, like Dhangri and other such areas have been brought into focus. And that happens because when you put pressure and you push them against the wall, they have to go to some new areas and create new challenges for security. So that is precisely what is happening. What has happened in Kokarnag is little premature to analyze because operation is still going on.
Fair enough.
So it will not be fair for us to start analyzing it in detail. But knowing the history of this unit, they had eliminated Burhanwani. They are Anantnag tigers. They have a record which is very, very enviable. So we will analyze in the sense intelligence. Was it not very correct? Had the hideout got changed? Was intelligence a little old? So all those factors will get analyzed. Don't worry. There is army always have to learn, because for us it's life and death.
Fair,
If we
absolutely,
don't
absolutely.
learn, yeah, we have to face the next encounter. And so to that extent, we are dynamic, we are resilient, and allow me to tell you, it's not always you have to do different things. You have to do same things differently. You have to tweak them. Because after all, like what Jan Dhillon was also trying to say, search and destroy will take place. Intelligence-based operations will take place. Tweaking of these, more checks, refinement of standard operating procedures. That's all which is underway. And I'm sure with 15 Corps and the GOC and everybody being there, and let's not get in counterinsurgency operations, you do suffer setbacks. You can't always have free run of success. You will, even after so many years in Northeast, we still have encounters, we still have incidents, and suddenly we are saying, oh, what's happened?
Okay.
So that'll happen. And
okay, fair enough. Sir, hold your thought. I'm going to just go around the panel as well, and then I'll come back to you. Also joining me is Major General Sanjay Meston. Sir, thanks a lot for your time. I want to begin by asking you the same question. Some concerns have been raised, some obviously concerns have been voiced because of the casualties and the kind of casualties we have suffered in this encounter. Do you think that there is anything to worry about, or is this, as our other panelists said, as Lieutenant General Dhillon said, it was just not our day?
Shivani, good evening. Firstly, yes, people have got choices to raise their concerns. But as soldiers, having operated in these areas for 10 years and in Afghanistan, let me be very candid. See, firstly, the intent of the operations is very clear. It is to seek and destroy. If that be the intent, what is the existing ground reality? The existing ground reality is that the people of Kashmir are not supporting the terrorists. And even if they have to support, it is through gunpoint and through various other methodologies. So if they are not getting any support, obviously for them the only choice is to hide and take a hideout in the jungles. And we are aware that the terrain is very, very thickly wooded. It is extremely dense. And now what is the role of the army? Army's obvious role is we seek intelligence. And this has been a very, very good intelligence network where, if you see, there was jointness between the police and between the Indian army. That is a great effort. So timely intelligence was there, and therefore these officers or this unit, along with the police, was tasked that there is a certain element of some terrorist in the so-and-so area and you need to clear them. Now we come to the clearing drills. The clearing drills are very clear that even if there is, let's assume there is a source who's guiding them. So they generally first drew the cordon of the area and they start moving some 3-4 different small teams. So to make contact, while they are moving for contact, the advantage is obviously to the terrorists because they are on the dominating features. Now from a lower ground, it is extremely difficult to observe. So they obviously have been following the proper tactics of fire and move, which I would put it bluntly, it is one leg on ground. That means mutual support. And generally the Indian Army, all officers, we take pride in leading from the front. It is a fact of life. Right from the National Defence Academy, we lead from the front. And therefore the officers have led from the front and they were trying to seek contact. Now it is exactly what General Cages highlighted. It was not a day. Sometimes, you know, in these kind of encounters, he had the upper hand. The terrain is well known to him. Mind you, this Ahmed character, Uzair Ahmed, he's from that area. He knows the terrain well. So he has planned his hideout very, very well. And therefore, they have also got the basic tactics of fire and move and supporting each other. So they have exploited this. Better observation, better domination, coordinated fire. And therefore, they decided to strike. Our people would have been exposed at some time, so it is now very easy to do a postmortem and say this went wrong and that went wrong. I will support these officers. They have led from the front. They have led them boldly. We should also appreciate that both of them were Sena Medal awardees, and even the DSP who led, his father was the DGP. So I think it is a very, very great effort. So people should not criticize. Some panelists in some other channels also were criticizing, and you can do anything. But let us appreciate the efforts they have put. They have sacrificed their life for the nation. Yes, the terrorists will be eliminated. So I would say nothing has gone wrong. It was just not a day. Sometimes the things happen that he had the advantage. So I would put
what you're describing, as all of our military experts describe, the operation of seek and destroy in itself can only be done by brave people. You're actually literally seeking danger and death. So in that sense, I don't think words will fall short of how many, how much we say about the bravery of these men who have led these units and have led it from the front and have laid down their lives. So Shamsareen and Tuinsana, I want to bring you in as well. Tuinsana, first to you. Politically speaking, this does hit the narrative, quote unquote, of the government that everything is hunky-dory in Jammu and Kashmir. Don't you think the message that has gone out is actually quite the contrary to what you've been projecting over the last 2 to 3 years?
Well, good evening, Shivani. Good evening, everybody. Well, there is no doubt that every terror attack or every attack of this kind takes us back by several months. But having said that, like General Dhillon himself was mentioning, it was just a bad day. There is nothing to be particularly alarmed because the situation has been handled particularly well in the last 3 years. And I think the figures speak for itself. What we are witnessing right now are the sediments of decades of Pakistan-sponsored terrorism enabled with local support. Now the problem is the local support is not there. So these people, the limited terrorists, and there must be less than 100 of them. A few years ago, there were more than 5,000. Now there would be less than 100 of them. They are completely frustrated. They are devising new means. Like you mentioned, guerrilla warfare is one of the means. Hybrid terror is one of the other means. But all of this will be thwarted. Pakistan, this can't be seen in isolation. In the last 3 or 4 years, Pakistan has suffered several blows internationally, and India's increased involvement with Saudi Arabia has further isolated Pakistan. So yes, they
actually in their isolation, Tuhin, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. In their isolation and in their desperation, they become greater dangers. Pakistan and Pakistan-backed terror groups.
I am assuring you, we are completely abreast of the situation. We are completely cognizant of that danger, and we are fully prepared to handle it. These standalone terror attacks, like I mentioned, while they take us back by a few months, they are really the sediments, and I don't think Pakistan can ever get back to its original game. But having said that, it is very disappointing that people like Farooq Abdullah, Saifuddin Soz, and a couple of other people, which includes the infant terrible Mufti, Mehbooba Mufti, they continue to pamper these elements and they continue to help in deteriorating the situation.
Well, the whole chorus for talks with Pakistan, I'm sorry, there used to be a time when it used to be still in fashion, still in vogue, but that time is gone. If somebody is continuing to parrot that line, that's a separate matter. I don't want to waste our time discussing that. But Sushant Sareen, I want to come to you. Along with what our experts have already talked about, what is also coming to light is that earlier these terrorists may be threatening the locals to help them and living with them and extorting them in that sense. But now some pattern has emerged where they're actually paying some of the locals to help them out. And because that money is pretty handsome, that information is not coming back to the Indian establishment. Do you see this as a new challenge?
Shivani, I think General Dhillon and General KJ Singh also have said this. Look, there is nothing new which is happening in Kashmir. There is probably some changes in how what was happening in the past is happening now. It has happened in the past also that there were people who were being paid to give them supplies. Now, after all, if these guys are not living in populated areas but are living in the far out reaches in the jungles or on top of hills or in caves, they still need supplies. The only way they can get supplies is if they come into the inhabited areas and they pick up supplies and they go back. So obviously, you have to have a network of informers, and obviously the armed forces or the security forces in Kashmir did get the information that these guys are present in this area, right? That is why they were going out there. And that is also to the credit of the security forces that they were not saying कि अच्छा यार जिस दिन आएंगे उस दिन देख लेंगे क्या करना है.
Absolutely.
Right? They were going forward. So this is what a good army would do. This is what a good security force would do. This is what a very gritty army would do. And I'm sure these guys are not going to let the setback which happened day before yesterday pull them down. Certainly not. But there will be people in Kashmir who will be, who will be attracted by whatever money is coming their way, especially if they think that there is no real cost to be paid for getting involved in that exercise. So that is one. I think the second thing, Shivani, where I will certainly counsel a lot of caution to most people, we are very quick to jump to conclusions that, okay, the Pakistanis are down and out. And I'm glad that you mentioned this, that even though they are down and out, it is precisely when they are that desperate that they want to hit back.
Yeah, they're more dangerous now.
Yeah, because they want to show that, look, don't think that, you can just walk over us. Don't think we are going to roll over and play dead. Even if we are bankrupt, even if we are completely finished, even if our country is, fraying completely and imploding, but we are still in the fray.
Yes.
We hate you and we are still in the fray. So I think there is a need for us to consciously be constantly alive to the danger and the threat which comes from across the border. And I'll just say one more thing. And I just wonder what the two generals sitting out here make of it. Look, I would be very surprised if the people involved in this particular action from the terrorist side are actually terrorists. I would like to imagine, I suspect that these are Pakistani regulars, probably Pakistan SSG guys, retired maybe, because the kind of fire they have brought, the kind of discipline